I am Eliyahu Ben Zion, and my story begins in New York City, where I have lived since my youth. Before that, I was raised as a rabbi in the sacred land of Israel. My life revolved around teaching God's laws and guiding those who sought understanding. The Talmud and Torah were my compass, shaping every aspect of my existence. My family, too, was deeply rooted in these beliefs, but everything changed on a fateful day. December 21st, 2018. It was Shabbat, a day of peace and reflection, and my home was serene and tranquil. For years, I had lived with blindness, a condition that had drawn me even closer to God's teachings. My prayers were a tactile experience, each word felt through my fingers, resonating deeply within me. That evening, the gentle glow of the Shabbat candles brought a profound sense of calm. But in a fleeting moment of carelessness, I accidentally knocked over one of the candles. It tumbled, setting the tablecloth ablaze. Panicked, I tried to act, but my blindness rendered me helpless. Instead of quelling the fire, my actions inadvertently spread it further. Smoke began to fill the house, suffocating and toxic. My chest tightened and a crushing pain enveloped my heart. With my last breath, I whispered a prayer. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Then, everything turned to darkness. This was no ordinary darkness. It wasn't merely the absence of sight I had known for years. It was a profound void that seemed to pull my very soul into the unknown. It was deeper, colder, and completely silent. I realized this was just the beginning of an entirely new journey. After losing consciousness, I found myself in an immense, undefined expanse. It was a place of strange and disorienting darkness, different from anything I had experienced before. It seemed to pierce through my soul, chilling and unsettling. I couldn't tell if I was standing or falling. Was there ground beneath my feet? I couldn't be sure. Shadows moved around me, restless and unnerving. I could sense their presence drawing near, though their nature remained a mystery. Slowly, the formless void began to change. The grey darkness shifted to a deep, ominous red. This vivid transformation ignited a primal sense of danger within me. The temperature rose, and each breath felt like a struggle against an invisible force. The shadows became more distinct, yet still faceless. Their voices, whispers carried on unseen currents, filled the space around me. Each word rippled through my mind, heavy with emotion. Though their exact meanings eluded me, the essence was clear. They carried anger and deep disappointment, resonating in a way that felt impossible to escape. Suddenly, I became aware that my clothes were reduced to shreds. I stood there utterly exposed, vulnerable, and defenseless. This realization struck a deep fear within me, compounding the terror of not knowing where this place would take me or what I would encounter. My body moved forward, not by choice, but as if compelled by an unseen force. I tried to resist, but my efforts were futile. My legs carried me against my will. Ahead, massive, foreboding doors loomed, each engraved with inscriptions: Muslims, Buddhists, Christians, and others. The doors vibrated with an ominous energy, pulsating as though alive. Behind them, darkness and flames flickered ominously. But it was the door labeled Children of Israel that stopped me in my tracks. I felt an invisible pull drawing me toward it, stronger than anything I could resist. I fought against it with all my might, but I was powerless. The door creaked open on its own, revealing a consuming darkness. From within came sounds that filled me with dread, anguished screams, haunting groans, and wails that spoke of unimaginable suffering. As I crossed the threshold, a suffocating wave of heat overwhelmed me. It wasn't just physical, it penetrated my very soul, leaving an ache so profound it felt as though pieces of me were being torn away with each step. The pain echoed through every part of me, body and spirit alike, At that moment, I understood where I was. This was hell. My journey had only just begun. Beyond the door, a horrifying scene stretched before me. A vast, endless valley devoid of light, save for the flickering of flames. The screams of the tormented rose in a cacophony, cutting into my soul. Their groans reverberated in my ears, impossible to escape. I saw figures writhing and crawling across the valley floor. Some struggled on hands and knees, and with every movement, flames erupted beneath them, burning their flesh, yet it never disappeared. Others were crushed beneath immense stones, their agony etched across their faces. I wanted to help them, but when I looked at my own hands, I saw they too were ablaze. My skin cracked and burned, consumed by unrelenting flames. I was helpless, forced to watch and continue moving forward. The valley grew more grotesque as massive flaming pillars emerged from the depths. These represented the power and wealth these souls had clung to in life, now turned against them. Among them, I recognized figures from history, members of the Rothschild family, bankers, diamond merchants, and others who had prioritized greed above all else. One of them approached me, their eyes hollow and rimmed with fire. Their voice, raspy and trembling, pierced the oppressive air. We were God's chosen people, but we squandered His grace. We saw ourselves as superior, taking pride in our wealth instead of helping our people. Now look at us. God's justice is real. It wasn't only the wealthy. Religious leaders who had misused their influence, false prophets, and corrupt authorities were there too. Rabbis in their robes burned in the flames, punished for leading others astray. The sight filled me with horror, and then the most devastating realization struck me. I was one of them. A wave of fire consumed me, burning yet never destroying. The pain was unimaginable, coursing through every fiber of my being, ripping apart my soul. In that agony, the truth became clear. Despite my devotion, I had rejected Jesus and turned away from God's plan of salvation. The shame and regret weighed heavier than the flames, crushing my spirit. As I ventured deeper, the cries of other souls intensified. Each voice carried the same refrain of despair. We ignored the Messiah. We rejected Him, and now we suffer here. If only we could go back. At the end of the valley, I reached the edge of a cliff. Before me stretched an abyss so dark and vast that it seemed to devour all light. From its depths rose a cacophony of screams, more chilling than anything I had heard thus far. These voices carried no plea for mercy, no hope, only despair. These were the cries of those who had resigned themselves to their fate, utterly lost. I looked back toward the walls of the valley. Faces etched into the stone stared at me, their expressions frozen in agony. These were souls who had violated God's laws and betrayed their people. Their hollow eyes seemed to lock onto mine, as if accusing me of the same transgressions. A shudder ran through me. Amid this endless torment, a question stirred deep within my soul. Was this my final destination? Was I also condemned to this eternity? Or was there still a way to redemption? The answer was hidden, waiting to reveal itself as I pressed onward in this harrowing journey. Descending deeper into the abyss, the air grew thicker, suffocating, and the heat intensified beyond comprehension. The torment around me was no longer confined to physical suffering. It was a profound shame and regret that pierced the soul. Every scream, every moan echoed with the weight of earthly mistakes. These were not strangers to me anymore. This time, I encountered not only Jews who had rejected the Messiah, but also those who had manipulated their faith, distorting it to serve their own purposes and mislead others. A figure emerged from the shadows, his tattered rabbi's robe scorched and clinging to his disfigured form. His face was a ghastly mask, melted and hollow, with dark voids where his eyes should have been. Despite his wretched appearance, his voice carried a vestige of the authority he once held. "We are the ones who scorned God's grace," he said, his tone both accusing and resigned. We thought ourselves superior, yet we refused to lead our people with humility. We denied the Messiah and mocked his message. Now, this is our eternity. His words struck a deep chord within me, and I realized they were not meant for him alone. They were for me as well. For years, I had been consumed by pride, clinging to traditions and laws while ignoring the whispers of doubt in my own heart. I had scoffed at the idea of the Messiah, ridiculed those who believed, and taught others to do the same. The figure extended his hand toward me, and my gaze fell upon his fingers. They burned ceaselessly, yet they did not disintegrate, as though each flame symbolized an unrepented sin. He withdrew his hand and stared into my soul with his hollow eyes. "You are like us," he said. "Your pride kept you from hearing God's true call. We sanctified the law but forgot our souls. We rejected the Messiah, and now we pay the price." His words pierced me like an arrow, and the weight of my arrogance and blindness crashed down upon me. For years I had mocked the very idea of salvation through the Messiah, convinced of my own righteousness. But now, standing on the brink of despair, I understood the depth of my error. My heart had been hardened by pride, my eyes blinded by self-righteousness. I fell to my knees, my spirit shattered. Tears streamed down my face, though they evaporated in the searing heat. With a trembling voice I whispered the prayer that had always been my anchor. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. But even this sacred prayer felt hollow, insufficient in the face of my guilt. The figures around me began to fade, their screams echoing as they dissolved into the darkness. What remained was a profound emptiness within me. All the years I had believed I deserved God's love now felt like an illusion, a lie I had told myself to avoid facing the truth. I collapsed entirely, stripped of all pride, left with nothing but the crushing weight of remorse. And in that emptiness, a faint glimmer of hope flickered, an understanding that true redemption could only come from surrendering my will, my pride, and my heart to the one I had rejected. As I lay there, utterly spent, a light appeared in the depths of the darkness. Even in this horrific place, it carried warmth to my heart. Was this God's final call to me, or a last fragment of mercy? Hell's darkness had consumed all my hopes. Kneeling on the ground, utterly broken, I believed everything was over. But in that moment, a light pierced the oppressive void. It touched not just my eyes, but also my soul, a warmth that felt redemptive, comforting, and alive. Summoning what little courage remained, I lifted my head to see the source of the light. From within, it emerged a figure unlike any I had ever encountered. His face carried both judgment and boundless compassion, as if he could see every layer of my being, my sins, my regrets, and even the faint glimmers of goodness buried beneath them. Though I had never seen him before, my soul instinctively recognized him. This was Jesus. He approached me, and his voice resonated with a beauty and authority that seemed to transcend the torment surrounding us. "I see the goodness in your heart, Eloho," he said, addressing me by name. "Your deeds have brought salvation to many families. Your prayers and your help have strengthened their faith. Yet you have suffered here because you rejected me and ignored God's plan. But grace is in my hands. I forgive you because the light within you still shines, though you could not see it. When you return, you must accept this truth and understand the fullness of God's salvation." As he spoke, scenes from my life unfolded before me, vivid and undeniable. He showed me the good I had done, moments I had long forgotten or dismissed. One memory stood out: a Christian family struggling to make ends meet. I had helped them, both materially and spiritually, despite our differences in belief. My small acts of kindness had strengthened their faith and enabled their children to continue attending church. These seemingly insignificant actions rippled outward, playing a part in God's greater plan. Jesus' voice echoed again, gentle yet firm. The light within you has not faded, but you could not see it. When you return, recognize this grace and do not turn away from the truth. His words stirred something profound within me, breaking through the layers of doubt and pride that had bound me for so long. In that moment, I began to understand. Jesus was not only for the Jewish people, but for all humanity. His light had pierced through my darkness, illuminating a path back to life. Suddenly, I opened my eyes, my lungs filled with air, as if I had been pulled from drowning. The faint echoes of hell still lingered, but I was back, in my bed, surrounded by medics. I had survived. Yet even as I gasped for breath, I knew that something within me had fundamentally changed. But the return to life brought its own challenges. At first, the transformation I'd experienced felt undeniable, but over time, doubts crept in. I tried to suppress the memory of hell and the light of Jesus, rationalizing it as a hallucination born from the brink of death. I told myself it was fear, not truth, that had conjured the vision. I resumed my old prayers and rituals, clinging to the familiar comfort of tradition. Yet nothing felt the same. An unrest gnawed at my soul, a dissonance I could not silence. The memory of Jesus' voice, his words, and his light echoed constantly, refusing to be forgotten. Each day, the weight of the experience grew heavier. I could not escape the truth. Something deep within me had been awakened. Though I tried to deny it, I knew I could not continue as before. The light had revealed more than my sins. It had shown me hope. It had offered me a choice. And now, the question burned in my heart. Would I answer the call, or would I turn away again? In my heart, I knew the truth, and I could no longer turn away. One day, as I tried to lose myself in the routines of daily life, hoping to forget the encounter that had shaken me to my core, something extraordinary happened. It was an ordinary evening, unremarkable in every way. Until suddenly, the familiar darkness that had surrounded me since my blindness was shattered. It was as though a veil had been torn away, revealing a brilliance that pierced not only my eyes, but also my soul. At first, I thought it was a cruel trick of my imagination. My hands trembled as I touched my face, afraid to believe what seemed impossible. But it was real. Light flooded my vision, filling my living room with a radiance I had not seen in years. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could see. This miracle, however, was more than just the restoration of my physical sight. Standing before me, illuminated by the same light I had seen in the depths of hell, was the unmistakable silhouette of Jesus. His eyes, filled with a compassion that reached into the deepest recesses of my being, met mine. In that moment, everything became clear. This was no random occurrence, no coincidence. This was a message, a reminder of the path I had been shown and the truth I had tried to deny. Jesus spoke, his voice as steady and warm as the light surrounding him. "You've taken the first step toward me, but you still hesitate," he said. "This is a sign for you. When you return, proclaim the truth. Do not turn away again." As his words echoed in my heart, his silhouette slowly faded, leaving me alone in the room, bathed in the glow of restored sight. The miracle was undeniable. The physical healing of my eyes was a reflection of a far deeper transformation, a spiritual awakening. I could no longer resist the truth. To deny it now would be to reject not only the light, but also the very essence of grace and salvation. In that moment, I surrendered. I left behind my pride, my stubbornness, and my rejection of the Messiah. I accepted Jesus as my Savior, and with that acceptance came a peace unlike anything I'd ever known. From that day forward, my life became a testimony to the light that had saved me. I shared my experience with my family and grandchildren, knowing the road ahead would not be easy. At first, they were shocked. Some met my words with skepticism, hesitant to believe what I was saying. But as they watched the transformation in me, my newfound peace, the joy that radiated from within, and the humility with which I now approached life, their hearts began to soften. Slowly, they opened themselves to the truth I had embraced. This journey was more than just my own redemption. It became a mission to guide others toward the light. Through patience and love, I worked to help my family see the grace I had experienced. The light that had broken through my darkness was not merely a gift for me. It was a symbol of God's enduring call to all of us. I now understood that every moment of darkness we face holds the promise of a greater light. It is a call to step out of the shadows and into the truth. And so I walk this new path with faith, knowing that the same light that saved me can save others. Through God's grace, I left behind the mistakes of my past and began shaping a future filled with hope and love. The light that follows darkness is not just a miracle. It is the truth of God's promise to us all.